This is the Skin in the Game VC podcast, hosted by Tom Wallace, entrepreneur turned venture capitalist and the managing partner at Florida Funders, along with Saxon Baum, general partner and head of investor relations at Florida Funders. You'll learn from the best about investing in early stage tech companies, so you too can gain the confidence and find the tools that help you succeed as an angel investor. Are you ready to get some skin in the game?
All right. I hope everybody's doing well. Welcome to another episode of the Skin in the Game pod. My name is Saxon Baum, and I'm one of the co-hosts here on the pod. Today, my co-host Tom is not here. He is actually on his way back from Egypt. Walk like an Egyptian. He was at the pyramids. We're now doing deals in Egypt. No, I'm kidding. He was on vacation. He was on a river cruise in the Nile, seeing the pyramids. So we'll have him back for our next episode. But today you just got me and our amazing guest, who is somebody that I've known for several years at this point, Clint Graumann, the CEO of NUVIEW, and we're going to get into his story. What is NUVIEW? What are we seeing in space, the new frontier? And so without further ado, Clint, welcome to the Skin in the Game pod. How are you?
Great, Saxon. Thanks for having me on the show. This is a great show with great listeners, and it's an honor to be here.
Hey, I appreciate that. I'm sure our listeners will appreciate that too. Congratulations is in order for you as well. Why don't you tell everybody what's going on next week for NUVIEW?
Yeah, so NUVIEW's been on a great journey so far, and especially since working with Florida Funders. And we're into a new phase in the business. We're opening up our headquarters with a grand opening in Lake Nona in the Orlando area. And with that, we're breaking open our new labs, commercial headquarters, and it's really the international center of space-based LiDAR.
Awesome. Keeping everything in the state of Florida, which we love to see, and expanding from Cape Coral, it sounds like. So very exciting. Clint, tell us about yourself. Who are you? And then why don't you have that lead into NUVIEW? Talk a little bit about your background, because it is extremely interesting what you've done in the past and how you ended up in the seat today.
Sure. Yeah. So, as Saxon said, Clint Graumann, founder and CEO of NUVIEW, and long time in the space industry, specifically in the Earth observation sector. I've been through kind of a winding road of optical satellite imagery, synthetic aperture radar, thermal, hyperspectral, and through all those years have found an excellent place where there's a new opportunity in space-based LiDAR.
And those are definitely terms that everybody that is listening to this is going to know exactly what it means. In layman's terms, what exactly does that mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, I started with a small company in the Berlin area, a city called Brandenburg, where we had optical satellites. And we were at the time, the first commercial small sat constellation that produces images like what you see on Google Earth.
Got it. And so that then piggybacked into NUVIEW. Was there any gap in between, or was it a direct back-to-back?
Yeah, that's also a great question. There is no direct connection. It is a winding road of perfect turns. I think everything fell into place. And after working at a company called Rapid Eye, we were purchased by a company called Blackbridge out of Canada and continued to grow the business. We were then purchased by Planet Labs after that, and through that process, a winding road to starting a consulting organization where we were very specific in the venture-backed Earth observation space, and through there helped many companies that do, like I mentioned earlier, synthetic aperture radar, which is that grainy black and white imagery, like the similar concept to how you detect airplanes. Not quite the same, but pretty close. Hyperspectral, which are hundreds of visible and non-visible bands of imagery, and then thermal, being able to look at heat signatures on the Earth. And through all those things, there was this winding road of exposure to different customers and different opportunities all around the globe, from Australia and Japan to Europe and South America and North America. And I heard the same thing everywhere: is we need more LiDAR data, and that really led to NUVIEW in a roundabout way.
So we're at NUVIEW. Tell us about, what does the company do? What was the original hypothesis of the company? Where do you guys stand now? And then if you could talk a little bit about LiDAR, what is LiDAR, just so that everybody is on the same playing field here?
Yeah, let's start with LiDAR. That's a good
Perfect.
place to begin so people can understand throughout the podcast. LiDAR essentially uses, I'm going to really simplify it for those who have no exposure to photonics or optics. It
Keep it
essentially
simple,
uses,
stupid. That's
yeah.
what we say, right?
LiDAR uses a laser to measure the distance between what's transmitting the laser to what hits it on the other end and gets back. So if any of the listeners are golfers, if you ever use a rangefinder, that's a type of LiDAR that essentially sends an invisible laser out, measure the distance to the tee, and tells you how far. I'm not a golfer myself, but that's essentially the function.
I
And
didn't realize that that's what it was. Okay, interesting, because that's
yeah,
something I think a
that's
lot of our listeners will understand.
yeah, it's an oversimplified version, but essentially that's what it is. And the way that we got to the opportunity of LiDAR is I'd been doing this work in satellite imagery for a decade and a half all around the world. And as I mentioned a few moments ago, the customers always told me we need more LiDAR data for our project. And essentially, LiDAR data gives you extreme accuracy of what's on the surface of the Earth. And when people get LiDAR, they almost always do it from an airplane or from a UAV or a drone. And in that case, you can only do really small areas.
Yep.
And so when you work with satellite imagery, it's a global project, right? And so we needed to get LiDAR data that works with optical data or radar data to create an unbelievably accurate foundational model of what's happening on the planet. And when we discovered that there was no commercial solution for LiDAR out there, you only had a couple of science instruments from space agencies, we knew there was an opportunity to take this type of data, make it available at a global scale, and break open a market that had just been virtually untapped.
Now, is the goal with NUVIEW to, from soup to nuts, operate the entire process, aka build the satellite, launch the satellite, manage the satellite, build the guts of the satellite to be able to gather the LiDAR data? You guys get the LiDAR data back, process it, and sell the data, or is it a piece of that puzzle?
So it's more of a combination of
Okay.
different pieces of that puzzle. And even if you look at commercial, vertically integrated space companies like SpaceX, like everyone thinks of them as soup to nuts vertical integration, but they have an unbelievable number of partners that do different pieces throughout that process. SpaceX is very good at managing that integration and vertical framework, and that's really more like how we do it as well. There are certain components that are the secret sauce for us. And that's the guts of what's happening inside the satellite with the LiDAR and all of the newer technology. Stuff like a satellite bus or that outer framework around the satellite. We partner for some things on that, but we'll be bringing components in the longer we're in business and more vertical integration. But there will always be very important partners in the process.
Got it. Got it. Let's come back to NUVIEW because I want to hear about the next 5 to 10 years. Let's zoom out a little bit and talk about space as a whole. With the new president inauguration yesterday, Elon was right behind him. This weekend, Bezos had a successful launch, which is very exciting to see that. Give us from your insider perspective, give us some inside baseball snapshot of the space industry right now. Where do we stand? What are some cool things happening? And what inning are we in if you had to use a baseball analogy?
Yeah, that's a great question. If you look at launch last year, I think that's a good barometer of where space is as a whole. There were 145 launches globally last year. SpaceX had 138 of
Wow.
those launches, if I've got the number right. And it's
Wow.
pretty accurate. And so commercial space is on the precipice of where we are headed. Um, we've enjoyed a great 20 years of buildup. And I think right now we're at the place where we've got an administration that supports space, an administration that supports commercial. And when you put those two things together with the type of backing and support you have of the Elon Musks and the Jeff Bezos of the world, we're at a place where we can exploit data at an unbelievable pace with AI. And even the new $500 billion infrastructure work that was announced yesterday by the administration, you put AI on top of an unprecedented amount of data coming from space, unprecedented amount of launches, and we've got a recipe for success. And I think the we're basically in the first inning, bases loaded, at bat with no outs. Like we're in a great spot for huge takeoff in the space industry.
I love to hear that. And really, I mean, I'm a novice, but from what I can tell, you have, government space programs like NASA. You have some of these larger private companies now starting to do very well, like a SpaceX and like a Blue Origin. But really, from an investment standpoint, we're looking at this as a green field. I mean, there is so much opportunity. From an investment standpoint, Clint, put yourself in my shoes. What would you be looking for in terms of deals? And we just did, and I know that you know this because you helped me diligence it a little bit, Stoke Space, which is a very interesting company, focused more, I would say, on the more fair priced model of what SpaceX is doing of trying to get satellites in and around orbit, but using renewable, reusable rockets. Really interesting company. We'll go into it maybe later. What should investors be looking for in space?
I think launch is the rare exception to what I'm about to say. I'm not a huge fan of space to space interactions. I am
What
a
does that
very
mean?
big. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. Space to space means you're providing a space capability to other space capabilities um, in space, so on orbit. Um, the way that I like to see the space industry is space to Earth, meaning whatever capability that you are providing or bringing to market has a market on Earth that's growing or can grow extremely rapidly. And one of the things that we see shaping up in space is there are a very limited number of players that can be your customer in space to space. And those that have massive constellations, for example, like Starlink, that could be your customer, it isolates the number of customers to a very few, right? So you can either work with a mega constellation provider to provide your space to space solution, or you can work with the government to provide your space to space solution. And that really puts all of your eggs in a very small basket, right? And so the capability, you should partner with other space companies as a space company, but provide a capability back to Earth. Just like we saw GPS really open up such a massive opportunity, we're starting to see companies that are providing GPS solutions that are alternative to GPS, but the customers are on Earth and they can be a very big set of customers. And so when we started NUVIEW, this is a good example of how we think about it. Even though it's not a space to space direct comparison, the analogy would work. We looked at two different types of customers for NUVIEW: the kind that care about what's happening terrestrially, and those that care about what's happening subsurface in the sea. Both markets are relatively the same size, but there are many, many thousands of customers on terrestrial, but there are only a handful that care about and can pay for what's happening subsurface of the ocean.
Yep.
So even though our satellites could take both directions, we chose the one with the most customers. And so space to space is the same way. Can you serve a large number of customers on Earth with your space solution?
Let me piggyback off that. Let me ask you this. I do not know the answer to this, and I know that you will, and it's very interesting to me, and I think our listeners would enjoy hearing this. How does ownership of space work? I.e., if you shoot a rocket above the United States, is that space that is owned by the United States? Are there I don't know if the word is intergalactic rules? How does this ownership work of space? Or is there nothing?
I'll tell you, I'm not a lawyer. Maybe I'll play one on a podcast. But the way that I view it, investors may see this comparison well. If you own a stock, you own equity in something.
Yep.
If you own an option, you control it. And I would view space more as control than ownership at this point. And it has to do with airspace and what you control over your territory. But you get outside of LEO or get above, or sorry, low Earth orbit, or you get above a certain altitude, it starts to become much more ambiguous. And it's more like turf than it is ownership.
So have there been any turf wars?
There will be.
There will be.
There will be. Like I don't have any hesitation in saying that. The next frontier where I think that will start to play out is turf war over orbits and altitudes, as well as the surface of the moon. And NUVIEW is in both places.
Well, and I think too, one thing that I was always keen on with NUVIEW was the ability to use this data for defense. And one thing that I always ask you is, okay, if you're have government contracts with the United States. Does that prohibit you from having government contracts with China? Let's just say. What are you seeing to kind of flip this on the defense side? I've heard a lot of DoD people talking about space being a way to, let's just say, be more effective in terms of target areas and gathering data from different sorts of countries. What are you seeing from the defense sector in terms of the utilization of space?
Yeah, so that's you think about an orbit taking about 90 minutes. So you can, circle the globe in 90 minutes from pole to pole or at
Wow.
some angle. And what that means is that we've got unprecedented access from space that you wouldn't get in our particular industry from an airplane. We would never do business with any countries that are an adversary of our own.
Hmm.
So regardless of whether it's allowed or not, we just wouldn't do it. But if you think about the way, let's focus on imagery and
Yeah.
intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. If you need to know about an area that in the industry you call a denied area, this is a place that you're denied access to. If you were to go to that place with an airplane in an adversarial territory, chances are that plane's not going to last very long if it's within striking distance, right?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so the type of data that NUVIEW has, we will be producing data with an accuracy of about 3 inches. And what that means is that if you're going to try to get very accurate data over a denied area, you'd have to fly an airplane to get that type of accuracy, and it's just not going to happen. So space allows a company like NUVIEW to have access to these denied areas to support defense through intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance to a very accurate level.
Got it. Got it. And then from a zoom out from NUVIEW, same question in the lens of just overall education around space.
Yeah. So overall, when it comes to space, you get access to a large area that you may not get otherwise, and you also get a large visibility, right? And zoom out is the perfect analogy. Think of your you have what's called a cone of visibility, and if that is radio frequency, if that is imagery, it could be any number of things. You start to zoom out in simple geometry, you've got a bigger cone that's visible. And at the same time, we're starting to see capabilities to where satellites can communicate through laser terminals from satellite to satellite. And we're starting to see docking from satellite to satellite. And even though I don't think that's a great place for immediate returns in investment, having the ability to connect satellites that have big cones of visibility through laser terminals to move data from one satellite to the next, or to some remote outpost on the moon, like these are all opportunities to move massive amounts of data in ways that we've never seen possible before.
Got it. No, it's fascinating, and you are obviously on the forefront of this. So another question that is specific to SpaceX. SpaceX came out maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. There was a $350 billion tender offer for employees of SpaceX to be able to sell their shares either on the open market or back to the company. Few questions around that. A, is that just an insane valuation, or is that real? And then B, is the sky the limit for this company? And then C, how far ahead from a launch standpoint and in a commercialization standpoint are they from the other players?
They are like hard to catch. They're so far ahead.
Yeah.
When you look at SpaceX as someone who would use that type of service at NUVIEW, there are three things that really you think about. One is frequency of launch. How often can I get a ride? Reliability of launch. So how reliable is the ride that I'm getting to space? And then the price of launch. And they're tops in all three of those categories at this point. And that really is tough to compete with. And so they are creating a huge moat. And then if you're talking about valuation, um, I think that Elon Musk will be the world's first trillionaire. And I don't use that lightly. Like,
Yeah.
I think that the $350 billion valuation in yesterday's market would have been uncalled for. But as you know, in any free market, the price is what the market is willing to
Of
pay.
course.
And I think at this stage, that valuation with the current administration and where space is about to take off, I couldn't place that same valuation on other launch providers.
Yeah.
But one of the things that you see about Elon is he sees such a bigger picture than everyone else. And to be able to connect the dots between every single piece of the businesses that he has, from Tesla to, with Starlink as part of SpaceX, and launch and the vision to Mars, people often don't see the interconnectedness of those different parts, and it's really just amazing. So I can't say that valuation is off,
Mhm.
because I think we're only really seeing the start of where this is going to be in 4 years.
Well, and to use an Elon term, it's really first principles, right? If you read the Isaacson book on Elon, one thing that he did right when he came into SpaceX was rip everything out and say, why are we paying this much for this component? Why are we paying this much for that? We can do this ourselves for a hell of a lot cheaper. Let's think about things differently. And I think, to your point, most CEOs don't have that vision, but he's not a CEO. I mean, this guy is a once in a generation visionary, inventor, whatever you want to call him, however you feel about him. I think it's hard to argue any of that.
Yeah, I think in the earlier days, I used to think of Elon as today's Howard Hughes, and I don't think that anymore. I think he's a standalone in how he
Yeah.
envisions things. And we try to also see the much bigger picture than space-based LiDAR at NUVIEW as well. Like, there's this whole integration of thinking about how we understand the planet, how we move data through a structured network out to the end users. But that's where the massive market is, to eventually be taking our capabilities to the moon and Mars as well.
Let me ask you this. At what point do you go up into orbit?
Yeah, we are a couple of years out from
Okay.
our first satellite. We will actually, not announcing this yet, so nothing official. You'll have to wait and see what's coming this year. But we have something coming this year that you may get to see.
Awesome.
But there are some cool opportunities out there that have presented themselves, that they don't come from just being lucky. They come from time in the market and really getting to know the needs of users. So keep your eye out for something this year before the anticipated launch of the next 2 years.
Let me ask again, when do you personally go up to space?
Knowing it was a one-way ticket, I would still go tomorrow. Like,
Okay.
it is that amazing of a point in where we are in human space flight, and I would go tomorrow if the opportunity presented itself.
Very cool. Very cool. Let's bring it back to NUVIEW in the state of Florida. How
So,
much of a key role does the state of Florida play in the future of space travel, space programs? I know that, the space program was built out of the state of Florida. Where's your head on that?
yeah, you're going to see a step function in Florida's involvement in space. Like, there's this huge administrative behemoth with NASA that has played such a key role, from Texas to Florida to California, that it's all unbelievably amazing what NASA's done. But I think with the massive number of people who have stepped up jobs from the state level in Florida to the federal level recently, you're going to see Florida play an even bigger role, especially over the next 4 years.
So it becomes travel to Disney or travel to the Mars. Either way, you got to come to Florida to do it, right?
Yeah, and we're even starting to get a lot of the eVTOL capabilities here in Florida, electric or vertical takeoff and landing capabilities and
Yep.
transportation. You're going to see a blend of aerospace becoming aerospace again, not air and space, but these things are going to start to come together again.
Yeah, it's interesting. I saw a video last week, not to continue to talk about SpaceX, but it was take off in New York and be in Tokyo in 30 minutes, and it was a smaller a smaller ship that just goes on the top of the surface. It was fascinating, and the way that they were showing it is like business travel will never be the same. The world will be so much more connected. Which, if you can get to Tokyo in 30 minutes from New York, yeah, that's a little bit different than going to New Jersey.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't think that's out of the realm of engineering capabilities. I do think that there are other interests that are happening that will prevent that from happening fast.
Yeah.
But the technology is almost there.
Yeah, it seems like probably the commercial aspect is more important. The business aspect is more important than the, call it retail aspect at this point, which basically anywhere where the money is, as you said earlier, that's where people are going to go.
Yeah, I think the space industry, the tech industries at large, over the next few years, it's going to be follow the money.
So this might be a dumb question, but you are a bull when it comes to space in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the last couple of years have been pretty challenging for space and how things have changed. But this, I think we are experiencing today a turning point.
I love to hear that. I mean, the last couple of years have been challenging for venture capital. So from your lips to God's ears, right? That's the plan there. This is the year, 2025, the year of liquidity.
This is the year.
That's what I keep on saying. The year of liquidity and the year of something that you won't tell us that you referred to earlier. What does the next 5 to 10 years look like for NUVIEW? Obviously, don't reveal, the private secrets here, but what are you excited about for this company over the next decade or so?
Yeah, I'm really excited about being the first and only provider of space-based LiDAR for the world. And I think that that's something that can't be emphasized enough. Like those in the know from the industry know how big of a deal that is. But that's going to change so many industries having that data available. So that's step one. Step two is we were already selected very recently for a mission to the moon by the European Space Agency.
Well, congratulations. I didn't know that.
Yeah, thank you. That's going to be super exciting. We're in the first phase of that, and it's a multi-phase approach to get there. But we've put together an amazing consortium of different companies around the world to make that mission possible. And the idea behind that one is we've had such a limited presence as a species on the moon that we have a chance to do something that was never possible with the Earth. But we have a chance to map with extreme detail the entire surface of the moon. So all of these challenges you've seen with private companies trying to land on the moon and things tip over and you can't, or you lose contact, having extreme precision on the surface of the moon, we'll be able to forever preserve what it looked like before we got started. We'll be able to do better engineering and understand how to build a permanent presence there.
Got it. This is and has been an amazing conversation. Usually this is something that Tom will do, so I'll try to take his place, but we do a lightning round at the end of every pod. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions, quick answers if you could. So you ready for the lightning round?
Ready for the lightning round. Let's do it.
All right. Price of Bitcoin end of 2025. Double, so give or take 200K. I think we're at 93,000 today.
Yeah, give or take 200.
There you go. AI, bubble or not? First question, investing. Second question, implementation and using inside of businesses.
Well, I think it's, I should lead everything on investing with past performance is not indicative of
there
future
you go.
results.
You took your series side.
But I believed the investment climate in AI was a bubble, but I think we've hit a new precipice on AI that we may see another year or two of great opportunity here. But I think that we will see the leaders emerge by the end of 2025.
Yeah, love that. Final question, man on Mars, when does it happen?
2035.
2035. You heard it here, Clint Graumann. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here today. Clint, thank you so much, and congrats on the opening of the office, and congrats on all the success as of late. We're looking forward to what the future looks like with NUVIEW.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Absolutely. If everybody loved this pod and you enjoyed what Clint had to say, please throw us a like or a follow on YouTube. We do these pods every 2 weeks. So Clint, once again, thanks for being here. Appreciate everything, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for spending your time with Skin in the Game VC today. If you want to learn more about investing in early stage tech like a venture capitalist, be sure to visit the Florida Funders website at floridafunders.com. Join our angel network at no cost and get access to Florida Funders VC vetted investment opportunities in the next great breakout tech companies.